news of the weekend. Renowned doctors agree with renowned doctors. Unbelievable tweet from my guy, Aram Layton. We're talking about the Carlos Correa mess. We're talking about the Dalton Varsho trade from the Arizona Diamondbacks to the Toronto Blue Jays and who the Diamondbacks got back and all of that, as well as the best 5 remaining free agents. Welcome to the Just Baseball Show. Hope you all had a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever holiday you're celebrating. We're glad you're listening to us. I'm Peter. That's Aram. Aram, before we get into anything, how was your Christmas, brother?
It was good, man. It was good. It was nice just knowing, on Christmas Day that there was going to be no developments on the Correa stuff, so I could unplug and just enjoy my family. I was afraid we might get some updates here and there, and I'm like, dude, I do not. I'm excited about the whole conversation, and I think it's really fascinating. But man, it was nice to unplug for a little bit, honestly, right? Like just enjoy family. I feel a little rejuvenated already and ready to just kind of talk baseball, but it was really special to be down here. Cold for Florida standards. Iguanas were frozen in our front yard, which is super scary because they're not dead. They just go into hibernation and they can wake up at any moment. So I was trying to make sure the dogs don't bring them in the house because then they warm up in the house and then they run around. So Florida people, when it's under 50 degrees, don't know how to act. That was fun to witness coming down from New York, but it was great, man. How about you?
I had a good one. I actually was able to golf one of these days. I golfed on Christmas Eve. It's 70 degrees here in California, and that's
warmer there than it is here.
Literally, and that's why. But enough about iguanas, enough about weather. Let's talk about Carlos Correa. So the big news: Carlos Correa signed a big deal with San Francisco Giants, 13 years, $350 million. Then they had a press conference to announce the deal on December 19th. They come out, they say it's postponed. People are like, what's going on? I know I had some weird tingles happening. And then we found out the news. The New York Mets signed Carlos Correa. And the reason I brought up your tweet is because it perfectly encapsulated this situation. The Mets and Scott Boris, deep into the night, had a conversation about moving Carlos Correa from the Giants to the Mets after the Giants had a difference in opinion on Carlos Correa's physical. Mm-hmm. And then the Mets are now a little bit nervous. And that's why I thought you had the perfect tweet, because it's like, these doctors aren't different from these doctors. It's going to be the same issue. So let's talk about, what was your initial read when you found out?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's exactly why I had those thoughts. I was just really thinking about it from the perspective of, okay, if I'm in control here of the New York Mets and I find out, hey, the San Francisco Giants, who we just recorded an episode, you and I recorded, just talking about what a big addition Correa, would have been for the Giants, and how he can become that face of the franchise that they needed so badly, right? And then all of a sudden the Giants, get cold feet because of what we saw or what they saw in that physical. The Giants wanted Correa. That's why they offered more than anybody else. It's not like they got cold feet money-wise. They know what they're offering. That doesn't happen in professional sports. When they offer a deal, they know how much money they're offering. They already thought that through. So I thought that theory, and that was something that maybe the Giants, realize that they don't want to spend that much. No way. What happened is they got concerned in the physical, which happens often, right? It happens a lot. But what blows my mind more is the Mets side of it, right? Where the Mets are expecting it to be what did they think was going to happen when the San Francisco Giants doctors, who are going to be just as good, if not better than the Mets doctors, had the same concerns, right? Were you expecting Correa to come over and it's just a bone bruise? And they're like, oh, I don't know why the Giants overreacted so much. That's so weird. Obviously there was a legitimate issue. I don't know how bad it is. I don't know what it is. I'm not a doctor and I have no idea, but if another major league team has significant concerns and are willing to nix a major deal and deal with the PR blunder that comes with it, and obviously aggravated fans and a lot of things that come with that, it must be a pretty concerning thing on their $350 million investment. So it just seems so classic, right? Where the Mets end up seeing the same exact thing. And as we are recording this at 3:50 p.m. on December 26th, there's not much clarity. So all we really know is that the Mets and Correa are motivated to get a deal done, which we expect that to be the case. But it's just very ironic that they have the same concerns that the Giants had.
And of course they do. So here's the issue. So we at least got more information about the exact injury that the Mets and the Giants are worried about. So when Correa was 19, he had arthroscopic.
Arthroscopic.
It's a tough word.
Yeah.
It's Monday. It's after the Christmas break. Forgive me. Arthros arthroscopic surgery to repair a fractured right fibula and
Yeah.
minor ligament damage after he hit a triple in June of 2014 when he was 19 and he was still in the minor leagues. And then Jeff Luhnow, the Astros GM at the time, said that the fracture was actually closer to his ankle than his knee. And this is according to The Athletic. He even made a reference to he has a plate in his leg. Correa told reporters, he just hit my plate. I had surgery and he hit it. Just felt kind of numb, vibrating. So I was waiting for it to calm down. It was a little scary, but when I moved, I knew it was good. And the thing is that Correa hasn't really had any issues, or at least IL stints, relating to the same injury. He tore a thumb ligament in 2017. He had a back thing in 2018. And he only appeared in 75 games in 2019 because of rib and back injuries. So he's never had anything concerning to this. This has been a lingering issue. But Carlos Correa did sign that 3-year deal with the Minnesota Twins with opt-outs, but we never heard anything about it at the time. But I think with the deal like that, there wasn't as much of a concern, right? It's not a 13-year commitment with no opt-outs and a no trade clause, right? It's, if he gives you as good as he can in this season, and we'll see what happens. If he gets really hurt, we'll probably keep him because Carlos Correa, but at the worst, you only have him for 3 years. This is much different situation. And now both teams have the same issues. So I think the question that everybody is wondering is, what will Scott Boris do to combat this? But then what will Steve Cohen do? Because Steve Cohen at the same time kind of planted his flag, right? He came out and said, like, well, of course we're going to get Carlos Correa. I'm not sure the exact quote, but he basically
said it makes us better. He's like, this is the piece we needed. Like, we're great now.
And I'm going to spend more and all of that kind of stuff.
Which I don't have the rule book in front of me, but apparently there are some implications in terms of like tampering and whatever, because the ink didn't dry. So if he doesn't sign with him and he already spoke on a signing and him being a New York Met and he's not a Met, then I think there's some implications there, which is even funnier because that's the craziest part. And I love the ambition of Steve Cohen, right? I love how passionate and how excited he is to make this team good, and he's willing to do whatever it takes. And we've talked about that. But at the same time, it's a business, right? And you got to be pretty calculated. And I think Steve Cohen got ahead of himself, right? Because I was reading some of the stuff from Rosenthal and Heyman, and it sounded like a lot of the front office members kind of woke up to Steve Cohen saying, oh yeah, hey, I kind of got this deal down to the goal line with Carlos Correa if you want him to be on this team. Of course, every guy in the front office is going to say, absolutely. Yeah. Like let's add Correa here. But maybe it was getting a little bit ahead of yourself here when you just saw the deal fall through with the Giants, who desperately needed Carlos Correa or a player of his caliber, missed out on Judge. And again, I think you got to take a second to, you're excited. You hear Correa is available. You want to go try and pick him up, right? Of course, that's exactly what Steve Cohen wanted to do. But I think you have to take a step back here and think and be like, okay, if the Giants were really willing to nix this deal and said, all right, see you later, good luck wherever you go, there's got to be a more concerning red flag than difference of opinion here. Maybe our doctors won't be as worried with it. That's probably not going to be the case. And I think the physical, as you mentioned, for a 10-year deal, is going to be a little bit more encompassing because it's a big investment. All the money's guaranteed in baseball. And it was. And all of a sudden now, there's more concerns with Correa. I'm interested to see from the Boris standpoint, how do you pull this off? He did something similar with JD Martinez in a way that they were able to structure the deal after concerns with a foot injury when he signed that $100+ million deal with the Red Sox. Obviously, this is going to be triple that, or that it's supposed to be triple that. So is there a team option 5 years in? Is there a way that the team can protect themselves financially a little bit? This is where I want to see, and I know people don't like Scott Boras, but he's the GOAT of baseball agents. I want to see what the GOAT can pull off here. Like, I'm excited to see the magic that he can try to pull off here to get Correa the money he wants and at least some sort of guarantee, but also you're going to have to give up a little bit here. Clearly, if two team doctors, sets of team doctors are concerned, I guarantee the third team that looks in here is going to be concerned as well. So I'll turn it on to you, Peter. If you are a general manager or an owner, and I know it's not our money and we don't even know what it's like to have that much money, so it's hard to kind of think about, but just for the sake of the conversation, how many years would you be willing to give Correa based on just what we know? Let's assume that, I think we have enough with the leg injury to know it's a red flag, but he has played a lot of games the last 2 years at a high level.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's going to hold up for 10 years, but it also could hold up for 10 years. I'll never forget Dolphins doctors, I'm traumatized from it, saying that Drew Brees, his shoulder was done. He's not going to be good. He's not going to be able to survive the contract. He might never be the same. Go get Dante Culpepper instead. And that's what the Dolphins did. They went and got Dante Culpepper, Drew Brees, Hall of Famer. Dante Culpepper was gone in less than 2 years. So, we've seen doctors be wrong about these things, and it's really hard to predict how a human body is going to age, especially when we're talking about some of the greatest athletes in the world, and Correa is one of those. How many years are you giving this dude?
So it's such a hard question because we don't know all the information, right? Like, we don't know the true meaning of this injury and what it means long term, and how important these certain ligaments and joints are for how a 36-year-old Correa is going to look like. We don't know how these things age. That's why we're not trying to play doctor here. All we could do is we have the information in front of us, and we can make our best guesses based on just being around the game enough and trying our best. But here's my thing, and this is why you said it at the beginning, and I still have some conspiracy theorism, whatever that word is, in my head, because we know that the Giants had the medicals at the beginning, right? Like, we knew that they had at least most of the information, and then they did a double check. So whether it's right or wrong, in my head, there's a part of me that still believes that the Giants strictly got cold feet, and that this injury isn't as bad, that they thought to themselves, do we really want to invest $350 million? Like, it needed for them to be absolutely perfect for them to do this kind of investment. Because with Steve Cohen and the Giants, or Steve Cohen and the Mets, excuse me, they've blown so far past the $293 million threshold, or 294, whatever the fourth largest, where you have to basically pay 70 cents on the dollar, 90 cents, or some crazy tax threshold. Do I truly think that this injury, if Correa had history of, this thing keeps getting hurt, then I have another issue. If it's been 8 years and he got the surgery when he was 19 and he's never had a problem with it, I don't mind giving him the 12 for 315, because I truly believe he is one of the better players in the sport. Now, last year when we were comparing Correa and Seager, the reason why I was saying I think Seager is going to get more, and I don't know if I'd really give Correa, is because he hadn't been super healthy up until that point. Remember, he had the full 60-game season, and then he had a very solid 2021. But that was it. That's all we had. So then I thought, I want to see him do it again. That's why he signed the 3-year deal, and then he did it again. He played 136 games, and he had a COVID bout. So it was
he would have played 140 plus. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think he played 136 of the 142 remaining. Like, he missed a little bit at the beginning from COVID when it was all around. So, like, I basically view that as healthy season. So I was like, well, he's performed every single time he's been on the field. He's now been on the field 3 straight healthy seasons. His playoff acumen is incredible. And this reoccurring injury hasn't reoccurred. It happened in 2019. So for me, there is a part of me, whether it's true or not, that think the Giants straight up got cold feet, and that this injury is blown a little bit out of proportion. I don't know. That's how I feel.
Then what are the Mets doing right now? Then what are the Mets doing right now?
I think what they're doing is Steve Cohen had a martini or 4 in Hawaii. Yeah. And he got on the phone with Scott Boris. Scott Boris, the amazing agent that he is, the best that we have in the game. You can like him or you cannot like him. It doesn't matter. We all have to respect that he is the best in the game. Might be the best agent in sports. Might be the best agent in sports history. I know that's a lot, but he might be. When you look at the dollars he's made.
He's worth $500 million.
Exactly. Like, he might be the best. So he got on the phone with Steve Cohen late at night when he knows that Steve Cohen has a freaking $1 trillion and that can just drop it like a dime. He said, yeah, the Giants are just being weird. You're the Steve Cohen-led Mets. You can easily do this.
Imagine and we'll what even this is going to do for your team.
And
this is the one thing you're missing.
And you know what we're going to do? Yeah. We're going to knock off $35 million because I'm Scott Boris and I care about you. Whether that's true or not is another discussion. But and then Steve Cohen said, you know what? Yes. And then the doctors looked at the injury and said, okay, this is actually something. Yeah. But the thing is, which I think is key, is that it wasn't so much something that the Mets immediately said, all right, we're out. Like they
Yeah.
didn't say that. It's not over yet. To your point, then we still have Christmas, and we have this weird section from Christmas to New Year's, which I'm not even sure a
Which
lot of
it's
things
like,
will get done
I didn't
either.
even know. So did you know the Monday after? So if a holiday falls on a Sunday, then the Monday after that is a holiday as well. I didn't know
It's
that. So today is a holiday as we
Boxing
record
Day.
this on a Monday. Sorry,
Boxing Day.
is that
Highly, that's what it's called, I think. Yeah.
that's
We're recording
crazy.
on Boxing Day. We're working.
I had no idea. I had no idea. So like I understand how that delays things as well. And it's interesting because the Giants didn't totally say no. They said, give us more time. And then when Boris said, no, I'm not giving you more time, then they're like, all right, see ya.
Yeah.
Now the back's against the wall for Correa's camp and Boris a little bit because it's like, okay, if it falls through with the Mets, who's signing Correa? It's going to be the Twins circling back on a shorter term deal or a much cheaper deal. We saw the reported top offer was like 280. Or I don't know if the Giants are circling back. It seems like that bridge is burned. So it's really interesting because if the Mets aren't the team that really works it out with Correa, other than the Twins at a much more diminished amount or a much shorter duration, who the hell else is coming into these sweepstakes?
We know who it is. We know who it is. The Rockies.
Yeah, which would be so.
They would so do it.
I'd be so in on that. That's the only way. Or like you get the Arizona Diamondbacks involved here, who we're going to talk about in a minute. But realistically speaking, right? Like there's not many other candidates that are like really going to make this happen.
Exactly.
So it seems like Steve Cohen and the Mets have a little bit of leverage here compared to where the Giants were at, because the Giants, when that happened, Boris had someone to pivot to. It was Steve Cohen. Now, who's Boris going to pivot to? The Twins? I'd say go ahead, buddy. Go get their top offer. Enjoy that.
And another storyline that I don't think enough people are talking about that I've been thinking about. Scott Boris needs to keep Steve Cohen happy because he knows that who's going to give his clients the most money? Who's he going to be able to use when he shouts out these rumors that the Mets are involved to drive up prices? If he ruins that relationship with Steve Cohen, that is really, really bad for Scott Boris. So I would agree with you. The Mets have more leverage here, but at the same time, like you said, and like I said, the Mets did come out and kind of plant their flag here. So both sides have a little bit of leverage, but I would say the Mets have more. Screwed. Yeah, both sides are a little bit screwed. Okay, but so that was, I gave you my feeling based on conjecture. It's just kind of my vibe, for a lack of a better word, thoughts about this situation. Do you think I'm off? Like, what's your opinion on the situation? Do you think that the Giants definitely didn't just have cold feet, that they are really concerned that this injury is concerning you? I'm curious to see what your perspective is on it.
Yeah, honestly, like, I think it's a little bit of both, right? Like, I think when you have that red flag, even if it's not, sound the alarms, this guy's doomed, he's going to be peg-legged in 5 years. But even when you have that little bit of concern, it almost sometimes splashes some water in your face of like, holy crap, we're giving this guy, $350 million, right? So like, I don't think in a vacuum it was we don't want to make this deal, let's exaggerate an injury, which isn't what you're saying, but I'm just saying like the extremes. I think it's a little bit of a combination of, okay, we're making a big time signing here and a deal that can really, really be bad or really be the start of that next phase of our franchise, right? And we know these long-term deals rarely age well, and usually age more closer to poorly than average. And I think we're going to see some guys break that with like Bryce Harper and some of the others that I think will break that trend. But when we're seeing guys already being signed into their 40, 41-year-old deals where we're like, holy crap, how are you going to pay a guy at 41 years old, 40 years old? And then you get a little bit of that red flag of like, hey, this guy's definitely going to be feeling his leg even more than the average guy at age 40. I think that really shook them into what they were agreeing to. Because when I try to explain to a casual baseball fan or my grandfather or family members that are like, what the hell are these contracts? I'm like, I can't really tell you, Gramps. Like, it's crazy stuff, but it's what you have to pay to get these guys to play for you. So I think it's a little bit of a combination of the injury itself, and then I think the injury almost starting this dialogue within the organization of like, are we sure we want to do this with Carlos Correa if we could go get Rafael Devers next year. We could go try to get Shohei Ohtani next year. We can go get, make another offer. So I think if you're going to make that big time contract offer to somebody and sign somebody for that much, I think you got to be as confident as humanly possible in one of those deals. And I think it became very clear that they couldn't be as confident as humanly possible. And that was enough to walk away.
I think I totally agree with you. I also, to again put on the tinfoil hat, I think there's a chance that Farhan, everything you said, I agree with. I think Farhan could have looked at this roster because we look at rosters daily. We've been looking at this Giants roster now for a while. Let's say they add Carlos Correa and it goes perfectly. How many games they win next year?
78.
Okay. So that's why I also think that, is this injury actually so serious that they didn't want to invest? Or was it semi-serious?
Yeah.
And that they needed 0 red flags to actually do it. And they got 1 red flag, but it wasn't that big of a red flag. And then they just said, you know what? We're not going to do it. We know this team. It's not worth it. And then the Mets, they found out about it because Steve Cohen had a martini or 4. Then it was like, all right, we got to have our doctors look at it. It was like, oh, well, he does have a plate in his leg. Like, this is something, we're going to sign him for 12 years. Are we sure we want to do it? And then they thought, okay, let's take the holiday to decide.
We can probably drive this price down even more. Right?
Exactly.
And
that's why I don't know if it's that serious.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's serious in the grand scheme of 10 years, right? And especially if you're
or
the Giants,
13.
Right?
Even 10 and 13 is big difference.
13.
Yeah,
you're not going to win the World Series next year if you're the Giants. You're probably not going to win it the year after that. You're maybe hoping that you'll be closer to competing for a title the year after that. So that's the thing. I think if the Giants were one piece away, maybe they could justify the risk. And I think the Mets, you could say they're one piece away from being a World Series team, right? I think they already are a World Series contender, but you get Correa on that team, they're probably the World Series favorite. So that can maybe make the Mets a bit more inspired to take on that risk because, hey, we could win a World Series right here. If Correa's leg is, fucked up in 2030, yeah, that'll suck. But if we won a World Series in 2023, I think the pill will be much easier to swallow. And that's why I think the Mets and Boris and Correa will work this deal out because they can win a World Series next year. And sure, it might be shitty on the back end. He might really be banged up. But if you win a World Series, you'll do it in 2 seconds, especially if you're Steve Cohen. And that's where I'm at on it too.
I'm at the same place. I do think that they will work it out. I don't think that he's going to go back into the market. I don't think Scott Boris will allow that to happen. I could even see it being a 10 or 11-year deal for 300 or something. Let's just get something done.
In there, they'll put some clauses in there. Maybe they'll incentivize it up on the back. They'll get creative, and that's where having the greatest agent maybe ever, whether you agree with all of his practice or not, is going to probably help put this deal over the top because I think both parties want this thing to get done. And that seems to be the reporting around it too.